Hey, welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport, where I think we can agree the theme of this week has been squeezing the last drops of juice out of various lemons, actually, and scraping multiple barrels to try and keep that boxing revenue going. I don't know how I feel about it. I honestly don't. If you break this down, right? We've got 40-something-year-old Derek. Derek's got to be 41 now, surely. And he's going to be fighting Otto Arlin. Otto Arlin was famous for boxing AJ in the amateurs. That's pretty much it, and cutting Tyson Fury. That's what he's famous for, right? Which is par for the course for a standard 16-year-old from Brixton. No, I'm joking. In essence, what we have here is a fight nobody asked for. And you're going to take Derek away from his home turf to put him in a fight nobody asked for. No one in Manchester asked for Derek Chisora versus Otto Arlin. I think we would have all stomached Derek versus Jarrell Miller. The build-up would have been awesome. While I don't think they're enemies, I think there would have been enough spice between those two, enough competitive energy to have made it compelling. And then you've got two stars that would have just perfectly meshed. Zero defense between them, all heart, all work rate, just two big lumps going at it. And that's kind of what fans are looking for in boxing now. That's what's bringing eyeballs to the screen. Otto Arlin is none of those things. He's a tall southpaw that doesn't really like to get stuck in. You saw against AJ that he was kind of the Swedish Malik Scott, wasn't he? Just once he knew his money was secure, he just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. And AJ put him out of his misery. Now, I don't know if Derek is going to do the same thing. I hope he does. But, I'm just not overly excited. And I don't know if you guys are. And I wouldn't understand if anyone was, because this is just for Derek to get paid. And then we start looking at, why is Jarrell Miller under so much pressure? I mean, why are they making life hard for Jarrell Miller? If Salita doesn't want to work with him, let him go. If he does want to work with him, then be honest and say, well, I'd rather he was working with me on this fight, so I'm making life hard for him. But it seems that they're trying to hide behind this, that, and the other. What's clear is Miller wanted the fight. So for Salita to come out with press releases saying he turned the fight down twice, did he turn the fight down, or did he turn down working with Salita Promotions? That's the question. And I'm actually surprised that the promoters weren't able to just push it through and say to Salita, look, we can get Wild in another fight, but Derek's got to fight Jarrell Miller. And maybe that's reflective of the commercial pull Derek's now got, because you don't feel AJ would ever be in a position where he couldn't get a fight made he wanted. So whenever this fight is, and no one knows the date, I don't think people don't care about the main event, but whenever it is, people are going to go to Manchester just after spending money over Christmas for what? To go and see that? I don't think so. And that's a really poor way to honor Derek, who's been a warrior. Let's not forget, Derek is the guy that took on, may not have beaten every one of them, but he's taken on guys who will walk into the Hall of Fame. Never ducked anyone. You pick some of those names off his list. Fury, 3 times? Fought Klitschko. Like the hard punching Klitschko. What more do you want from this guy? Did 2 fights with Dillian. Fought Takam. Like, Derek's got one of those CVs that you just nod your head and go, he did it the right way. And it'll be good to honor him with a couple of fights that bring out the best in Derek. This doesn't. It just doesn't. And the only comfort I take from that card is knowing that we've got Masood Abdullah getting his big card opportunity against, I think it was Kurt Walker, for the Commonwealth. That'll be a good fight. So whatever happens, Masood's coming to break ribs and break noses. So that's going to be good. We're going to get Willie Hutchinson versus Zach Parker. That feels like a loser leaves town sort of fight. I don't think Frank needs both of them. It's just overhead you don't need. You may as well let one of them go off to boxer or do something. And I'm trying to think from my perspective, that's probably all I'm excited about when it comes to that card. But I am 100% confident more names will be added to that. And then as that becomes the case, we can work out whether it's a good card or not. But I feel for Derek. I feel at this point boxing's let him down. He should have got his Miller fight because above all else, he deserves that fight. And look, we can talk about whether it's safe for Derek to carry on boxing or not, but that's not going to stop him. Derek was very, very clear. He said, do you think I'm leaving the sport while there's all this money to be made? And the truth is, if the damage is there, it's already happened. I have noticed that since Derek's turned 40, he sounded more and more Zimbabwean. I don't know if that's a sign of how many blows to the head he's taken or whether he just doesn't care anymore. But he's sounding more and more like an old Zimbabwean man, which makes me chuckle. And look, in an era where kids are taking forever to get to 15-0, look at how many fights Derek's had. And look at who he's been in with. Like, not many soft touches in that list. So credit to him, and I hope British boxing shows him the love that he deserves. But if we swing this conversation back around towards things kind of Matchroom related, but not quite Matchroom, we'll get to them later, don't worry. But if we talk about Conor Benn, we're none the wiser, are we, about why Conor Benn has been cleared to box or why he's allowed to box again. We're none the wiser, and hopefully most boxing fans agree with me on this. VADA have been the anti-doping body that we've never had to question. We have never had to question VADA's methods. We've never had to question VADA's results. We've been like, hold on. VADA seem to be catching everybody. And nobody's disputing whether VADA have caught them or not. And I think that's always been to VADA's credit. Now, we can talk about it being Victor Conte and, damn him forever. But the fact of the matter is they're catching people. And people were afraid of VADA. We know the fighters that never, ever had VADA testing as part of their program. It was USADA and USADA only. So as boxing fans, we've never had a reason to question VADA. So when we find out that VADA are the ones that caught the clomiphene twice, we believe the clomiphene was in the system. And so Conor Benn only has to answer two questions for boxing fans, and we will move on. Number one, was that clomiphene in your system? Yes or no? If he says no, then there's a two-part question, and it goes, so what went wrong? And if it was VADA, why did you not sue VADA? You've had enough time to do so. Why didn't you sue VADA? What were the grounds of that appeal? Was it actually the thing wasn't in my system, or was it you can't consider VADA? So I'm going to give you my take on this. What happened was everyone sat round a table, and it wouldn't have just been the boxing board. It might have been people like swimming, archery, cycling, all these other bodies that by law, by UK law, have to sign up to UCAD and therefore adopt the WADA code. All of them would be ringing UCAD and maybe ringing the board going, we can't really let Conor be found guilty. And the reason we can't do that, chaps, they're sitting down, chaps, this can't happen. No, this cannot, and I repeat, this cannot happen. And here's why. Oh, sorry, I can't do it anymore. Here's why, the other governing bodies, and I would have put the Football Association in there as well. It creates a very uncomfortable question. What are VADA doing that UCAD aren't? Because the VADA tests are in such close proximity to the UCAD tests that both should have caught the clomiphene. Now, apart from catching third division Welsh rugby union players and, badminton players from Yeovil, what are UCAD actually doing? Are UCAD actually testing? So, has any athlete ever said, show me the chain of custody of my sample, or my sample back with the chain of custody? Are they actually testing? Because Conor Benn came back clear on 2 UCAD tests and close proximity divided tests. He came back clear. So are they testing? And if they're not testing, what are they testing for? That's the question that was being asked, right? And everyone listening to this is asking the same question. So how are the samples going to the same labs essentially, but coming back different? So and so that would have posed a question to UCAD around, are UCAD fit for purpose? And by extension, is the global anti-doping process fit for purpose? And this is what fans would have started to question. And fans should be questioning this now. Are athletes being tested as much as the boxers are? Are you being tested to the same level that boxers are? And is it that actually boxing hasn't got more drug cheats, other sports have? They're just not being tested because you kind of gone, we don't want the hassle. We don't want the hassle. We don't want the ag. We don't want the torture of lawyer letters slaughtering us. We can't afford it. And it feels a bit like everyone sat around a table and said, it's better that we let him box than we have to deal with these uncomfortable questions. That's where I think we're at with Conor Benn. Conor Benn is simply boxing because dealing with the truth is far worse as a prospect than having to deal with essentially what Conor Benn has done. And so now Conor Benn's free to box. Probably the beneficiary of a favorable, political climate in his case, right? Because no one really wants VADA at the table because that's going to disrupt a lot of sports. If you've just perfected your doping control avoidance framework to avoid UCAD and WADA tests, the last thing you want is VADA going, now we know all your tricks. No. We're going to come and get you. We don't want that. There's the public outcry. There's a commercial meltdown that would happen if it turned out that our anti-doping processes were not fit for purpose. And there's actually the real possibility that sport as a means of national control and a way of fostering national unity would disintegrate and collapse. And I think all of these things became a factor in why Conor Benn was allowed to box. So who would have thought Conor Benn would become a political symbol for anti-doping? I never did. But I do like the fact that his old man had no qualms about poking Simon Jordan in his chest about the nonsense he talks. Because he's changed his tune a lot. Like, in the beginning, Simon was kind of on our side in terms of hammering Conor for being irresponsible, yada, yada, yada. Soon as Nigel shows up, gives him the Dark Destroyer eyes, mate, Simon Jordan starts wilting under the pressure.
I saw the interview you did with Spencer Fearon, where you think I'm a smarmy and deserves to get a smack in the mouth. And I'm trying to understand what it is you think I've said about your son Conor that would bring that reaction out in you.
There was people like Dylan White, Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders. He talked about it not once, and it's all like swept under the carpet. But with Conor, you all were just like on Conor. None of you lot thought about his mental health. You lot didn't give a and that's my son. And it's only because I'm a Christian man that I didn't want to just jump on you.
I see it slightly differently. I never said one derogatory thing about your son. My issue was with the advice that was being given. I thought that he wasn't being looked after. And I felt that Conor's response to tell the Boxing Board of Control to do one was unwise. I wanted Conor Benn to be innocent. So when you turn around and go, you're piling it on Conor, I've got to be honest, Nigel, I don't think you know what you're talking about in relation to me, because I didn't.
Well, no, because you were going on and on and on.
Do you think it was a witch hunt?
I believe.
Right. We've all got memories. Simon Jordan was talking about strict liability. Yeah. That's what he was saying. It's strict liability. So if it's in you, you're accountable. What does he mean he wanted Conor to be innocent? Like, no, like you failed the test. What do you mean innocent? You failed the test. Strict liability, Simon Jordan. That was your argument. And he's walking it back now because it's commercially expedient to do so. Yeah, so he's had to come back on the agenda because he allegedly has money in boxing. Don't know where, don't know how, don't know why, but allegedly. And look, I come back to everything I said before. If the stuff was in him, he should hold his hands up. I said this right at the time. And I also said, you can have to explain why their testing didn't catch it. They're the two things I've cared about from the start till now. Now that we've gone past it, now we've got to look and say, what does Conor do next? And he grabs the scraps of his career, and it is scraps, because it's been a hard 2 and a bit years for him, right? Let's just say it's 2.5 years since he fought in a British ring, closer to 3. What do you do now? Like, who's been funding his lifestyle all this time, and who does he owe money to the point where, how much of his purse does he even get to keep? Because he hasn't been earning. So how has he been living? And he doesn't live a cheap lifestyle. So how has he been living? I don't know. Definitely not the way Liam Cameron was living. So who's been funding that? Because that's also going to be interesting in determining what he does next, right? But it's looking like Eubank Jr. And I'm past caring. I'm almost like, just get this done, because they've built towards this for so long. Like, it's not even just now, it's all that kind of dropping of the seeds and the breadcrumbs for us to follow. We're here now. Get this fight done. Whatever you got to pay Senior to come out, get him to come out, because this fight doesn't make sense without Eubank Senior. It just doesn't. And so Eubank Senior has to be there. I mean, Nigel has to be there, and then let's see what happens. But in terms of where we go now with Conor Benn, to be honest, I think the public are so exhausted, they just like let him get in and get beat. That's really what this is about. But we also have to tackle Nigel's point, because Nigel says, look, all these other people got away with it. Yeah, because no one really knew what they know now, right? Like, when I did the episode with Larry, okay, that sounds like my 80,000 at Wembley now, doesn't it? But the amount of stick I got, the abuse I got, I was told I was delusional, and I was crazy, and I was this and I was that. But I knew the truth. And so the truth has come out. And so if Conor had failed in 2018, I genuinely think this would have been handled a lot quicker, and he'd been back boxing in no time. But the public were watching this time because they were ready. Conor was like that first big failure in the UK where we're like, oh, okay, let's see if Matchroom can bully their way through this one this time. And they couldn't. And so they've lost a lot of money on Conor. And I don't know if they'll ever make that back. Depending on what Eubank does to him in the fight, they never make it back. And so this ties into a wider discussion, because I think it was Sonny Edwards was saying that the anti-doping is so ineffective, right? It's so ineffective. And the risks of a clean fighter and a doped up fighter being in the same ring are so great. The ethical thing in boxing might be to simply let them crack on. Take whatever it is you want, and then, let's just see the freak show. So this is an ethical dilemma as someone who's a coach, but also someone who has been elbow deep in this kind of dirty side of sport for a long time. I can tell you the difference that being juiced versus not being juiced offers. And it's significant. People think it's about building muscle. It's not. The muscle is almost like the only bit you see. You don't see the increase in red blood cell count. You don't see the increase in ATP production. You don't see the speed at which you can get rid of lactic acid. You don't see the improved perception, improved reflexes, improved neuromuscular junctions. You don't see all of the other things. It's like looking at an F1 car and going, the reason this F1 car is faster than my Mini Cooper are those wheels that it has and that wing. And you'd be ignoring every bit of technology, every patent they've filed, every bit of genius that's gone into making that car 3 or 4 times faster than yours. And when you understand that gap, then you understand it. So let me just give you a rough idea of how serious this is. I could take a woman now. We'll take a woman 5'7" and about 67 kilograms, right? And today, if she does what I ask her to do, I reckon I could get her to pull 90 kilos off the floor, right? On a deadlift. And she might do one of those, maybe 2. But 90 will feel hard for her because her body's not used to that, right? And even if I trained her and we trained solidly for a year and a half, if she was pulling twice her body weight, that would be really impressive. Yep, just on tuna noodles, a bit of creatine and a load of sleep. That would be impressive. So pulling twice your body weight would be impressive. Now, I could put her on small doses of any compound you want to choose. We can run a roulette wheel on that. I could put her on small doses of any compound. And that same 5'7", 67 kilogram woman, inside of a year and a half, will be pulling 200 kilos. So she'll be pulling 3 times her body weight in the same training time frame. And then depending on genetic potential, it may be higher than that. That's what you're dealing with. And that is in any sport, that's in any aspect of life. You on that stuff is better than you not on that stuff. So it's very hard to tell a boxer, because maybe they've experimented with some compounds and they felt the benefit because they know their own bodies better than anyone else. All of a sudden they go, wow, rounds 8, 9, and 10, I felt incredible. You think they're going to stop taking it? God, no. Now it's really just about not getting caught. And that's easy because on a non-title fight, you're not going to get tested. So you could have your whole first third of your career never being tested. And it happens a lot with women's boxing. I know some of the women who are. They're being guided on what to take. I know them. Because I know the people doing it. So I know that this is happening. And so when I watch the performances in the ring, I know. Now the question is, do you spend the money to bring them down to their natural level? But for most of them, it's too late now. Because in taking the drugs for as long as they have done, they've just expanded what their body's capable of at a base level. So let's say you at your best is your 10 out of 10, right? When you take gear, especially as a woman, you go from 10 to about 15 and you don't come down to anything below 12. So you're already going to, your physiological potential is 20% better and will always be 20% better. Like the vasodilation, like so the bigger blood vessels, they don't shrink. You just have those now. You're just more efficient because your body's adapted to it. So these are the things. So even if you did try and test, there's just a strand of women now who have that advantage. And it's not going to come back in. And it's the same with men. You take those drugs for long enough, you've just got the adaptations needed. There's a reason Mike Tyson could do what he did at 58, and he knows that. So do you allow people to just take stuff? Morally, you'd say yes, but legally you can't because every governing body in this country is required to sign up to UCAD by law. So you have to. Now, how you manage that relationship with UCAD is entirely up to you, but it's going to be very hard to implement. But just morally, I find it very hard as a coach now to say, I can guarantee the kids you're fighting are clean, because I can't. And I haven't been able to for a long time. You know, think about this. In our society today, go on your Explore page. How many women do you see with six-pack abs? There are loads, right? Hundreds, if not thousands. Now go and take a walk down your high street. How many women do you see in that kind of shape? You don't. And that's not to say women aren't incredibly strong. They are. I can point to you women who I think are freaks of nature. But you slap them on the back, you slap them on the arm, and things wobble. That's how nature intended. They're still strong, but it's like I'm going to hide the strength under a layer of body fat. So what you're seeing on Instagram isn't real. And here's my test. If you ever have to hear someone tell you that they're natural, chances are they're not. Because we live in the world. We know what genetic one-offs are. There ain't many around. That's why they're one-offs. And nowadays, Instagram's got you believing every third person's a genetic one-off, and it's crazy. But to wrap all of this up, this is the point where we've all got to move past the Conor Benn doping thing. And I know there'll be fans that go, I hope Eubank irons him out because he's a cheat. Fair enough. You can't argue with that sentiment. But it just means that we're all going to watch, aren't we? And that's the sad bit, is that we're all still going to watch. So why do we care? Do we care because he got caught? And it's like, mate, if you're going to do it, don't get caught. Or do we care because we genuinely feel that he's violated some sort of secret code? And I don't know what the answer is to that. Just seeing as we're here now, we've got to talk about Matchroom, haven't we? Like, Matchroom are struggling. Matchroom are in the mud. They're struggling. I don't know if they're struggling from a revenue perspective. I don't look at the numbers like that. But that stable's washed. For a decade, Anthony Joshua has carried that. Supported latterly by Conor Benn. But they carry that stable. And it's only when you hear the stable now and you go, oh, that's horrible. That's terrible.
You know, boxing's changed a little bit because a lot of it's diverted to the heavyweight division with AJ and Fury. But I actually think right now our stable is sensational globally for the young kids coming through. I mean, you look on Saturday night in Birmingham, Hamzruddin, future world champion, star. Cameron Vong, massive step up, star. Taylor Bevan, making his professional debut, GB podium squad, Commonwealth Games medalist.
Badge
so many great young fighters on that card and so many great fighters fighting week to week.
Can you imagine Eddie Hearn having to reel off that list in 2016? There weren't guys that he wouldn't have signed any of those guys in 2016. When he had guys like Campbell, Olympic gold medalist. He had access to guys like James DeGale. He had Kell Brook, Anthony Joshua, still undefeated. Like prime real estate is what Eddie Hearn had back then. And do you remember when Hearn said Matchroom weren't really looking to do these small scale UK shows? That's what they said. That's not really our lane anymore. We leave that to other promoters. That's what Hearn was saying. Right? We do global events now. We work with global stars. You know, we promote global stars. That's what we're looking for. If you're not on that track to be a global star, we don't want to work with you. But you look at his stable, guys like Hopi Price, etc. They're good boxers, don't get me wrong. They're not top tier. They're not top tier. They're never going to sell stupid amounts of tickets either. And this is what I mean. So Hearn's got desperate now. And he signed Pat Brown. And look, Pat Brown's a big lump of a guy. Now, the Northerners will love him because he's called Pat Brown and he's got a beard, right? It's enough up north. Like, it's the beard that makes, I mean, they'll just assume he tarmacs driveways or works in a factory because he's got a beard. Probably wears a donkey jacket, right? But Pat Brown is as northern as they come. Big guy, agricultural boxer, just hits people. And hits them hard. But there's no finesse to it. And so here's the worry for me. Now, I can watch Pat Brown fight all day, every day, by the way. So this isn't me saying I don't like him. It's just me being realistic about what happens when you get to world level. And what happens when you get to world level is you can't do that stuff that you do in the amateurs. So all of a sudden, you got to be able to put it together. Number one. Number two, you got to show the toughness needed. And I'm not saying Pat Brown doesn't have it. I'm just saying it's a long road when you're 25 and you're having to learn how to be a professional in a division where those punches really hurt. But then add to that, by the time Pat Brown is really up to speed in the cruiserweight division, all the guys that we know and care about will be gone. So my question is whether Pat Brown's going to go that Okoli route. And will Pat Brown end up being a guy that fights at cruiserweight, maybe wins a British and a European, maybe a world if he gets to win guys like Opatara are gone? Can he do that? Number one. Number two, will he then move up the weights and then box as a heavyweight? And our Matchroom basically saying, right, we've really signed you as a heavyweight, but we're going to do this cruiserweight thing while you learn to be a pro. If so, smart business. Because I can see Pat Brown being a better heavyweight than he is a cruiserweight. I just think there's a different level of skill required to the one that he has. Like, he will get hit in the face. He has zero defense. And I don't know if he's training with Travis and Jamie Moore. If he is, then he will always have zero defense. That's their thing, isn't it? Just hit and get hit. That's cool. It's entertaining enough. But I just think Pat Brown is the sort of guy that Hearn would not have touched a while ago. No profile, no real social media, no, nothing. He's just a solid guy who did the amateurs the right way from up north. Great. But I'm going to give them praise because I liked how they announced him. So they did the media lunch, and then they did an evening with Pat Brown where they just invited people. I imagine it was free. And it was just an evening with Pat Brown. He got to talk to people and connect. And I think that's good. I wish more stuff like this happened. And at least it's a sign that Matchroom were prepared to try stuff. The live concept is obviously something we mastered at the new age, but it is what it is. And, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should go live again. And if we could get 300 tickets sold, would we go live? 100%. And people think it's a profit thing. Nah, not really. You'd run that at cost, to be honest. Just to have 300 people talking boxing, you'd run that at cost. And I think it's viable. But then people would ask, why 300, mate? 300 is big enough for it to feel like it was worth stepping out for. Right? Let's be honest. Yeah, then that's what you want. You want to be sat there going, God, there's loads of other people here. And then you know that it's not Poxy. But it's also the kind of number where even if it was just me, Martin, and Andy, there's enough coverage, number one. Number two, if you then start to add in people we could bring, like your Denzels, your Isaacs, your Dan Azizes, at a push, maybe your Daniel Dubois, then we've got coverage. Throw a couple of promoters in your Alfie Warrens, your Steve Goodwins, we've got coverage, right? So now you feel I came to something. And that's really what you want to do with a live show. Yeah, it's that point where you get to mingle between acts, so to speak. But whether it happens or not, I don't know. But that would be the main criteria for us three reuniting in public, would just be that kind of, let's get the numbers out and, let's talk boxing. But back to what we're saying with Hearn. So what they're doing with Pat Brown, I want to applaud, right? If the real strategic play is to build him up in Manchester, and as they do that, build him up to a heavyweight, then I think they can nail that Northwest market. So that's the positive side of it. The negative side is, can he make that adjustment from amateur to pro? I feel I should talk about this in depth, but I don't think most people care. But I might do at some point. That's the good of Matchroom. Then we've got to talk about the nonsense when it comes to Matchroom.
Back to Scotland. When is Eddie coming back to Scotland? So, Ed, I'm going to put it to you, for the people of Scotland, when are you coming back?
I'll be honest, like we had some chats with Josh Taylor, of which those talks continue, but unfortunately we're going the weekend of Tommy Fury KSI. Sorry, Tommy Fury Darren Till, yeah. Probably on the Friday night. And unfortunately, because of the training situation of the same trainer with Darren Till, Josh Taylor couldn't fight on that weekend. So that was a shame, because we were looking to return back to Scotland in January, but we keep talking to Josh, and there is a chance we could work together, and if we do, we'll be back in Scotland in the first quarter. But it's something we want to do.
Josh Taylor. After everything that's been said about Josh Taylor, everything Hearn said about Josh Taylor, now you need Josh Taylor because your stable lacks star power. That's crazy. And we haven't really touched on the real meat and potatoes of this, Now Hearn's trying to resurrect the Smith brothers at 36 and 34? So Liam 36, Callum 34. And they're talking about runs to world titles at that age. What? Why? Liam didn't look great against Eubank Jr. And, people are making the assumption that he messed up the Josh Kelly fight because his weight was all off. And look, if you put Liam Smith in with anyone competitive, I don't think it ends well for him. Definitely not a middleweight. I think at light heavyweight, if you were to put Callum Smith in with Joshua Buatsi, it doesn't end well for him. Age catches up to everybody. Inactivity catches up to everybody. Callum hasn't fought since January. And Beterbiev did a number on him. It wasn't like we want to see a rematch to that. Beterbiev did a number on him. So where are you going to send him next? Do you know what I mean? It's not like Beterbiev's been inactive since, unlike Callum. So where are you going to send him next? On a side note, how is Dmitry Bivol, WBO number 1, coming off a loss? Isn't the whole point of these ranking systems that you get your title shot, you shuffle down to let the next person in, and then you rebuild your ranking? Yeah, I think we kind of now know these rankings, they mean what they need to mean. Yeah, it's not objective reality anymore. It is just whatever we need to do to sell tickets. But let's just come back to the Smith brothers. This is the kind of thing, if Frank had done this 5 years ago, Hearn would be mocking him. Hearn would be mocking him, and then Hearn would just reel off all the young stars that he's got. This is the desperation that Matchroom have now, where they really want to just maximize revenue. This is about maximizing revenue, number one. It's also about having to look good to DAZN before Frank comes on board. Because when Frank comes, it's going to be a full frontal assault. I can see Frank going, right, first DAZN show, Bentley versus Janibek. I can see that happening. Bentley versus Janibek, world title. That's the sort of stable Frank has now, where he can just do that, just throw guys into the mix in a way that Hearn can't anymore. So what Hearn needs, and you're seeing it now, he needs those old stages to put the other kids over. Because they're not going to anchor shows. Pat Brown's not going to anchor shows on his own for a while yet. These Cameron Vaughn guys, all these guys, they're not going to do anything yet. And so Hearn needs that. And he also needs to keep his DAZN paymasters happy, because we know he's not happy that Frank is on there now, right? We just know that.
Only broadcaster really pushing boxing, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it's the only global platform for boxing, and that's why we made the move, 4 years ago. It was a major move at the time. It was a big risk, and it's really paying off.
We've talked about the upsides. Is there any downsides to Queensberry joining DAZN for yourself and Matchroom or not?
No, I don't see any.
In terms of scheduling, getting dates off DAZN?
No, I think that, we will go to DAZN, they will go. DAZN have had multiple promoters for a long time. And you got to understand, I need DAZN's viewership to be as big as possible. Right? I need them to have as many subscribers as possible. So the more content they have on, the easier it is for us to drive subscribers, and the more value DAZN are providing for subscribers.
So that's really interesting, actually. 52 weekends, right? There are 52 weekends. Let's just say Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. That gives you 156 dates. I might even be wrong on that. No, with 156 dates, we'll say. Yeah, 156 dates. Now you've got Matchroom, Queensberry, Golden Boy, the pay to play guys like your GBMs, TM14s. I can see Aram coming on board. What if PBC come on? You could have 5 or 6 promoters basically divvying up 3 nights on a weekend. And then it doesn't feel good. It almost feels like everyone's going to be promoting every week. And so you get caught up in the noise. And then you got to factor in the Saudi cards, right? And then there's the quiet period around those. So I find it hard to believe all of these promoters can sit on one platform happily, is the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is, we're going to find out who's really powerful, because at some point, DAZN is going to say to one or more of these promoters, can you do shows on a Wednesday night? Then we'll see who's got the power, because you're going to put the guys on the Wednesday night where you're like, I'm not so sure that they bring in numbers, and keep the guys that bring in numbers on there. So let's see what happens in that space, because I am 100% intrigued. And so it puts pressure on Eddie Hearn to deliver for DAZN now, because now it's a head-to-head. They can see they will have the analytics. They can see what Frank does and they can see what Hearn does. And so what they'll be able to measure is what's Hearn's incremental value. So having Eddie Hearn do 300 interviews in a fight week, what does that actually do for his viewership versus Frank, who might do a lot less and do maybe even more numbers in some situations? So we're going to find out a lot. We're going to find out whether Hearn was telling the truth or not. That's for damn sure. So one last thing I want to talk about, and it's part Dubois. Well, it's probably not the last thing, but part Dubois, part AJ, right? The benefit of being in boxing like I am is you tend to have mutual friends with a lot of boxers. What I'm hearing is he took that loss really hard. Like on an emotional level, he took that loss really hard because he's always believed he's light years better than Dubois. And so one of the things that happened with AJ, and I don't know if you're seeing it, but you're seeing a different cast of people around him for the time being. And it's dawned on him. And I don't know if someone's had a word, but it's dawned on him that he's got a load of yes men around him. And people haven't been telling him the truth about his decline. All that learning on the job nonsense, that it all went to his head because he thought people were telling the truth. He thought they were acting with integrity. And people haven't been telling AJ, you haven't been hungry or good enough in a long, long time. You've just been fighting for the money. And so he's gone through that crisis of confidence. They can say it was injuries, and that's all right. Whatever they need to say is cool. But he had a massive crisis of confidence that I don't even think he's over yet. So there's very much he doesn't know what he's going to do, is the message that's coming back. And on a human level, I feel for him. Like, you had all of those people, and I said this, when he had the meltdown in the ring, you've got the wrong people around you if they couldn't get that microphone out of your hand. Because if I was looking after a boxer, the minute I see him grabbing that microphone, I'm like, you don't want to do this. Give me the microphone. Yeah. Give me the microphone, have 5 minutes, and if you still think it's a good idea, I'll give the microphone back to you. And so there's this massive crisis of confidence within AJ's world and his own mind. Like, it's dawning on him. The 258 thing hasn't worked. His boxing career isn't working. From what I'm hearing, the Ben Davison thing now, he's looking at it going, what did I do that was different from anything I've done before? So there's a lot of introspection happening in the world of AJ. Could probably come out the other side. Most boxers do. But then the question is, what does he do with it? I don't know. That bit I can't answer. What I can say is that's the reason the fight's not happening Feb 22nd. Joshua's not 100% confident he can compete with Daniel right now. And he doesn't believe there's anyone in his circle that can point him towards that win. Yeah, so then it's like, do I just let Daniel have his time? Younger, fitter, stronger, better. Do I let him just have his run? And then I just go and get my money fights and go. And that's kind of where he is now. Will people see him as less than because he didn't rematch Dubois? No. We understand where he is in his career. Go and fight Wilder, go and fight Fury, retire. You've done your bit. You can retire saying, I fought everyone you wanted me to fight. Won some, lost some, doesn't matter. Fact is, I fought everyone in my generation. And I fought the best of the next generation. And you retire. Spend your millions, go and become AJ. Who knows what happens after that? But for once, I actually do sympathize with AJ, just because that's a hard place to be when you realize everyone was just blowing smoke up your backside to your detriment. And that's a real, real shame. So one of the things I don't think I've potted about was when for one of the boxing board lunches, so it was for the Southern Area Committee, and they had it. I can't remember what the hotel was down near Tower. It was down near Tower Bridge. Like, you know, when the lunch starts at 12 and you get home at 2:30. You know it's been a good session. Now, obviously met some great people. Like, I'm forever grateful to Steve Goodwin for inviting me. So I really appreciate that. It was brilliant to see Martin as always. I you know what? Whenever I'm around Martin, I know that we could just record at any time. Like that, and I guess that's what made New Age unique, right? You always felt that what you got through your headphones was what we were like in person. I think it's pretty much true. It was lovely seeing George Fox. Hope to see him boxing again. I think that'll be a real good news story. And, I know his mindset's a bit different now. So, everyone should be allowed a second chance. So let George do his thing. I was happy to see him. Happy to see Don Charles as always. And then always to see the big man, Daniel Dubois. It was really good to see him as well. You got to remember, like, that relationship goes back to like 2013, 2014 times. So that's how long I've known Daniel. And I think I've been the guy that said he's special from day one. And I had to take a lot of stick when he came unstuck against Joe, when he came unstuck against Usyk. But I've always believed, give him the right path and he'll be a world champion. I'm glad that he's done that. It was lovely to see Beck Connolly. Finally got to talk about the sponsorship. So that was brilliant. Sometimes you gotta do these things, but Beck Connolly, lovely woman as well. It was lovely being on the same table as guys like Mickey Amu, Dave Evans, etc., etc. It was all really good. The Goodwins, as always, really, really nice. So after the whole ceremony, actually Denzel was there as well. So it was good to see Denzel. The Peacock lot were there. No tension. I don't think so anyway. And, the usual, the Warrens were there. It was nice. It was just nice to see, like informal setting, you just get to talk a few things. And like I say, that's what you call accountability. I do a podcast about boxing and I'm confident in what I say. So I'm not afraid to be around people involved in boxing and they can pull me up at any time and say, I don't agree with X, Y, Z. But see, when you go to these things, you always come back knowing a bit more about the game than you knew before. There's some stuff I can't touch on yet, but don't be surprised if Pat Brown's signing sees Matchroom edge out another person who might be in that space of similar dimensions too, for various reasons. But these things happen. Now, the thing I took away, and I've got to just, shouts out to all the officials, right? Because it's brilliant. James, the barrister, thoroughly good man. I forget his surname because I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. So apologies for that. And a lot was consumed that night. Mickey Amu, really cool guy. Now, another guy, super, super knowledgeable. Yeah, you learn a lot just listening to guys like that. And then just spending time with the officials, Dan Frost, so a lot of love for Dan. Ben Harmsworth, as always. More time you spend with Ben, the more you realize that he's got a great future as an administrator of our sport. Like he gets it across so many different dimensions. Do you know what I mean? All the way from grassroots, and you just work your way up that ladder. That's Ben Harmsworth. So massive salute to him. Like really, really good chat with him. Who else do we have a good chat with? The referees. So Sean McAvoy, Lee Every, and I can't even remember these names. And Bob Williams. Can never forget Bob. Is it Williams or Williamson? I can't remember. Say Williamson. So what you learn actually is boxing's not as cut and dried as you think it is, right? Because I'm there like, you're asking refs, why don't you guys penalize holding, or why don't you penalize reckless use of the head? And then they're like, and they pushed back and said, do you want me taking 6 points off in a fight? And I was like, that's a good question. Then it was like, do you want referees disqualifying guys every second fight? Because that's what would happen if we applied the letter of the law. And so interesting to note that refs are like, look, I've done over 400 fights. I have a really good intuitive feel for how a fight should go. And I trust my instincts to pick up on infringements. And because, like when we watch at home, we think, yeah, you should be doing that for holding. But we're just sort of jumping in and out and picking up on the anomalies. Whereas the ref's real job is to guide the whole fight, minute by minute, second by second. And these are the things you learn to understand. Actually, let me just salute John Edwards as well, because he was there. Manager, trainer out of Guildford City. So massive salute to him. But just having those conversations with officials, understanding that actually there's all this stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't get to hear about. But it will influence why this person's refereeing or that person's refereeing. And we just don't get a chance to see it. So what it's made me do is actually ask questions before I have strong opinions. I go, actually, let me try and understand why something like that would happen before I jump in and go, oh, it's a robbery. And that's one of the things that we talked about as well, is like judging. You know, when is something a robbery? When is it not a robbery? And I'll come back to this point. If it's a 12-round fight and the judges agree on 8 of those 12 rounds and then disagree on 4, it's not really a robbery, however you choose to slice it. But a lot of times they agree on about 8 to 9 rounds. And then there are about 3 swing rounds where you probably watch that fight going, oh, God, that could have gone either way. And then you get upset when it does go either way. But it was really, really good. I encourage people, look, if you're within close proximity to a British Boxing Board official, it's worth spending time with them and understanding how they do their job, what makes their job hard, what's made their job hard in things like big fights, for example. Then you just have a different perspective on why things happen the way they did. But salute to all of those guys. We forget. Now I'm going to sound like a real kiss ass, so whatever. We always talk about the board should resign and a whole new generation of people should come in. And so my question back is actually, who wants that? I mean, who wants that? Because the thing about the board at the moment, from what I understand, is you know what you're getting. Yeah. Everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. They know what they're getting. It's similar to what they got 5 years ago. Yeah? Makes planning super easy. We start bringing new people in and new ideas, we're going to have another 5-10 years of transformation and change and uncertainty. And then we're just going to complain about the uncertainty. And the more I realize actually just got to let the board do their thing. Like, we don't talk about the successes we have in this country, like boxer safety and that sort of thing, that we're world leaders at when it comes to stuff like boxer safety. In terms of moving our belts around, we do it pretty well, and we have pretty big British and Commonwealth title fights here. We do a lot of things well, and sometimes I think we forget that when we moan about the refereeing and the judging. I just wanted to say that because as you're sat there on a night bus, fucking sharing canned cocktails with a bunch of 19-year-olds who are just asking you questions about what university they should apply to, these sorts of thoughts crop up into your mind. But I just wanted to say that, and as always, you know, I appreciate you guys listening. Me consuming 50 to 60 minutes of your time, I know it's a commitment, so as long as you enjoy it, I love that. You know, we always say that the message is the same. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share. Remember, every Wednesday we do the Q&A. That's been doing really, really good numbers, actually. I don't know if we'll get to podcast numbers in terms of exposure. Some of those answers have done, actually. There's one I did about Liam Cameron, I think, on my Insta story. That response got like 2,200. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But yeah, that you know, Twitter, the whole thing, the Facebook page has done well this year. We've gone from 2,500 to 20,862 in a year. Now, it took a lot of work to do that, by the way, but by the grace of God, we've done that. So that's a definite sign of growth. This year's been one of growth across many different dimensions. Sometimes you don't always grow upwards, you grow outwards as well. And I think that's kind of been what this year's been about, just growing outwards, getting that kind of podcast equivalent of man strength. So let me wish you guys a good day to you guys. Love that. And I will be back soon, I promise. You take care.